So just to get started, I'm going to do a little bit of a brief introduction and then we'll roll right into the panel. We do have some set questions, but I will open it up and make sure to get you guys involved as well, make sure to answer any questions and then everybody came with. So welcome to the Bethesda Green Innovation Center Summer Speaker Series, where we tackle environmental challenges through sustainable entrepreneurship. During this series, we're discussing ideas that impact people, the planet, and profits. My name is Emily Bernard. I'm the program manager of the Innovation Center here at Bethesda Green, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us today for our discussion around building resilient communities through environmental justice. I'd like to take just a minute to introduce you to our work here at Bethesda Green. I know quite a few of you are familiar with what we do. We organize our programs under two primary categories, business and living. The Be Green Living program elevates community engagement and enhances the quality of life for local residents. And under our Be Green Business program, we support leaders who are building for-profit business models around innovative and sustainable solutions. We welcome mission-aligned idea stage through seed stage startup companies to our innovation lab. Quite a few of them are here today. As well as Larry, our panelist, is also one of our current incubator members. Please feel free to pick their brains. They're all brilliant. They're all wonderful. And then finally, before we jump into today's panel, I do just want to say a quick thank you and acknowledging our amazing network of partners as well as sponsors and supporters. Thank you for all the work that you guys do, helping us do the good work that we do. So today, we are talking about environmental justice, which aims to ensure that the environmental benefits and burdens are distributed equitably, enabling all communities to thrive in a sustainable environment. This session will explore the ways in which sustainable businesses and nonprofit organizations collaborate with and advocate for underserved communities, educating them on practices that support environmental justice. We'll delve into some community-driven approaches that promote inclusive decision-making and foster a sustainable future for everyone. So I just want to briefly welcome and introduce our panelists here. Starting from the left, we are welcoming Larry Davis, who is the co-founder and lead consultant for Green Mechanics. Vanessa Garcia Polanco, apparently makes her mom happy. I'm going to ask her about that later. The director of Government Relations for the National Young Farmers Coalition. And then finally, Ronnie Webb, who is the founder and executive director of the Green Scheme. So if you guys wouldn't mind, I specifically did not introduce your organizations because I want you guys to put it in your own words. So if you wouldn't mind just starting off with, who you are, what brings you here today, and what you do at each of your organizations. Larry, I'm going to point to you first.
Oh boy, okay. So with Green Mechanics, our one-liner actually we got from being a part of the incubator program is give us a problem and we'll use nature to solve that problem, right? So oysters are a great example of that. An adult oyster can clean up about 50 gallons of polluted water a day, right? So the idea is that with Green Mechanics, we'll come in and design areas for oysters, for example, to thrive in. And that provides the water quality treatment, the cleaning of the water, letting nature solve the problem for you. And that creates more cost-effective ways of providing some solutions to environmental challenges. And then we get into data. So using sensors, I'll pass this around just as a prompt. But building technologies that work around nature, and then how can you use data and sensors to verify the impact? That's what we really try to focus in on, and that ranges from water to energy to agriculture, and then combine that with data. Also has some algae here, if you guys want to take a look at that. So again, it's just working with nature to solve our problems, and using low-tech ways to work around those natural flows systems.
Vanessa.
Sure. I am Vanessa Garcia Polanco with the National Young Farmers Coalition. We are a nationwide coalition of young people, and we loosely define who's a young person. As long as your values align and you have 10 years or under experience in agriculture, you can hang out with us and you can become a member. And we have 30 chapters in 24 states and around 6,000 members who are membership fees, member paying dues. But also we have like 200 supporters as eaters and consumers and as advocates. And a lot of what we do is advocate at the state and federal level, most of the federal level right now because we're in a Farm Bill authorization year, to try to get more material wins and support for the next generation of farmers in an equitable way. So most of the farmers I work with and represent are first generation, BIPOC, and their climate stores.
Thank you. And Ronnie.
Yes, Ronnie Webb. I run the Green Scheme. The Green Scheme is a nonprofit that was designed to educate young people and community members in entirety on some of the environmental factors of being environmental stewards, but also leading them into green and career pathways. We do that by establishing what we call outdoor classrooms. Typically what an outdoor classroom looks like is a farm space with a nice youth or community garden area. Also high-level farming going on, but also what I like to, a major component in our sort of outdoor classrooms is we make sure these classrooms are located near water source, so usually a stream, some type of water source. We're able to run our programs that we run, and our programs are based on, we have one called DC Water Watchers, where kids go in and put boots on, assess the creek, the health of the creek, make recommendations, able to engage with city council as they advocate and make different changes and stuff within the community. But also core and heartbeat is teaching them the urban gardening piece, which is nutrition based, sustainable agriculture, showing them how they connect with groups like Vanessa, with farming, showing them how farming can be profitable, just turning them entrepreneurs, whether it's a value added product or just teaching soil science, becoming a soil science teacher, something like that. So we kind of tackle it from that perspective.
Amazing. Thank you for that. I guess just to start off with kind of a general question here, but what are some of the best practices that you guys have seen in ensuring environmental justice is achieved through the programs, all of the various programs that you've described? And please feel free to take it, whoever wants to take it first.
I can take it because we just wrap up like a 3.5-year battle on this. And it's a battle because we were sued 27 times. Just to give you an example, so as you know, especially in agriculture, there's a long history of discrimination, especially towards black farmers and other protected identities. And that led to historical lawsuits in the last 20 years. What happened, we also saw that, especially in the last administration, many farmers were turned away because they were deemed not appropriate viable farming operations. And a lot of that came out of racism, and a lot of that came from a lack of cultural understanding that a lot of farmers don't want to grow corn and sorghum, they want to grow vegetables to sell at the farmers market in Bethesda or in Ward 7 and 8. And a lot of USDA programs, the Department of Agriculture, does not understand that kind of vision. So 3.5 years ago, we helped pass a law that will help farmers get compensated if they thought they were discriminated, and you had to submit paperwork that to prove you were discriminated. And we got a bunch of lawsuits because some people thought we were being too fair and compensating farmers. And then we had to pass another law on top of that to open the pocket of money that was $5 billion, not to only black farmers as it was originally intended, but other protected categories. And we were okay with that because, as we know, a lot of discrimination is not only happens on race and color, but it happens on age and gender and many other protected categories. So we actually just finished, those payments went out 2 weeks ago. 46,000 farmers nationwide got payments, and National Young Farmers Coalition was one of the cooperators. And a cooperator was one of the folks that we were actually calling folks, letting them know you may be eligible to apply for this, submit all your paperwork. And just to give an example, this took 3.5 years, and obviously it's just a little band-aid in the system on how we can be proactive to actually help folks that had economic losses because they were turned away from loans that they're eligible. Most of the time they were eligible, but they did not got good customer service. So when we are thinking a lot about environmental justice, we also have to be thinking about economic justice. Like, are we all actually creating viable opportunities for green entrepreneurs, for farmers, for green enterprises to have the same viable opportunity to compete in the marketplace? So we have to think about as farmers also as entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
I mean, those are very solid points. addition to that is, depending on the communities that are being engaged, how do you create more accessible information and data for the communities to then make more well-informed decisions to take action? I'll speak a little bit more to this as we get into the discussion, but there is a community we've been working with called the City of Eagle Harbor. It's the last remaining African-American waterfront town in the Chesapeake Bay area, and I think one of 5 or 6 of its kind remaining in the country, in the United States. And the town is about 100 years old, and you get into the mid-1960s, there's a coal power plant that's installed adjacent to the town, maybe a mile and a half for where the residents live. And so this is prior to EPA, prior to Clean Water Act, prior to Clean Air Act. And so you've got a situation where you have residents that have been living there up till now, that have been there for decades, and they're reliant on groundwater and septic to do their day-to-day operations, right? And so the premise of, okay, what's the impact of this power plant on this community, to where if I have a home and I want to grow food and I want to grow a garden, well, there really hasn't been any real-time information or data for this town to make a informed decision of, hey, maybe it's good or maybe it's not good for me to grow food here. Folks are on groundwater. Is it safe to wash my clothes or do my laundry or to bathe using? We don't have data for that. Folks like fishing, crabbing, and getting oysters out of the Patuxent River where the town is located. Is it safe to do? We don't know. And so the idea is that through an EPA environmental justice grant that we're working on is, how do you create more accessible information that then empowers the community to then make more well-informed decisions to take the next step? So getting access to information and data, I think, is important as well.
Yeah, great answers. I think for me, and sort of how I approach it is, in DC, we concentrate on east of the river communities, Ward 7 and 8, but we are all over the city, right? And when we go into a particular community in DC, I give you a prime example. The community I grew up in, it's called Langdon Park. It's a Ward 5 community off of Rhode Island Avenue in Washington, D.C. And they approached me, D.C. Department of Parks and Recreation approached me. They were like, Ronnie, I know you run this organization. We want to build this. It was a nice garden. It's called Chuck Brown Park now. But it's a nice youth garden that they built. So they were asking me to help advise and help be on the team that sort of gets that in place. And one of the things, and I'm going to go to my point first. My point is that before you go into any community, it's the community that I'm from. I'm like, my homeboys are there, like everybody, the aunts, I know everybody, their kids, everybody. And when you go into a community, it's so important to identify the key stakeholders, right? And I'm talking about people there's stakeholders that people often overlook, right? So, and I'm not talking about my community, but certain communities I went into, public housing, I've identified the candy lady whose apartment 200 kids go through a day just to buy something. I know who the football coach is, who got 100 kids coming through his practice and he's engaging with all of the parents. I know who the local faith-based leaders are in those communities. I know who the dudes standing on the block are on that community. I know who just everybody. I know who the ANC commissioners, which is the lowest elected official in DC. But just knowing all of the stakeholders, I know who runs this group, that group. And just establishing, knowing that you're coming into that community, asking them how do they feel about what type of work you are trying to do is super, super duper important. And to go back to my community, man, my deputy director is actually we met in basketball camp in my neighborhood. And his cousins run a very, very successful youth program for sports. So it's like basketball and football, and it's usually about 150 kids daily coming throughout this same park. But our garden, the garden that they put, it cut off a portion of the football field, right? And so, because, and this is my deputy director's cousin and family that actually, they know each other, so it's a family thing, it can get handled really easily and smoothly. But it just shows you, like, I can give you other prime examples of other communities where, as you mentioned, like, we were hiring, we got a grant, a USDA grant to run a community foods program in public housing, and I'm posting flyers up to hire a resident gardener and a youth gardener, and I hire somebody out of the community, but they say, oh, you can put flyers on this side of the property. And so understanding those type of sort of dynamics, also what it does is it secures you in doing that work. It's like your insurance plan when you're going in the community. It's always gonna be somebody that come up and say, oh man, I didn't know about this, or you didn't tell me about this, which goes back to what you were mentioning earlier. It's like the information has to be accessible, and we talking about it's different gaps and stuff too that you got to think about. So seniors, are all the seniors tech savvy? Are they going to look at an electronic newsletter, or do you need to post it in the building where everybody's going into? So just understanding the community, really taking your time to not just look at it from sometimes our food systems or our environmental lens, and look at it just from just a general point, just to get a clear understanding of where you're going to be working at.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those. Those were all very thoughtful answers and 3 diverse answers as well, so I appreciate that. Vanessa, I was wondering with what you were speaking about, I know that you guys operate on a national level, but could you bring it local for us? Could you point to an example of a local young farmer that you've worked with and how you've supported them through some of your programs?
Yeah, definitely. Her name is Tulu. She cannot be here today. I forgot to invite her. But I see her once a week. She's also a neighbor, and I'm taking care of her rabbit this weekend. So, I think we crossed the professional boundary where now I get to pet sit. But I think that tells you a lot about the kind of support farmers need. Like, sometimes farmers have told me that they don't take vacation because they don't know who can water their fields, or in my case, take care of our rabbits. But for example, a lot of what we do at Young Farmers is provide grants. We had distributed $1.3 million in grants, and this was a program that we ran for 5 years. Unfortunately, we have sunsetted it because the corporate funder has moved to other interests. But if you are working for a multi-million-dollar company and want to give grants to young farmers, come to me. So a lot of what we did, we gave away $5,000 to farmers, and it was a really easy application process. You can be used for anything that you wanted. Literally, we saw anything from to pay for student loans, for child care, to actually buy land. And that just shows you, like, sometimes farmers just need like a small infusion of money to help their operations. For example, Tulu, our farmer who is actually in a farm incubator in Maryland. She's also a farm educator in another farm in Maryland, and she lives in DC with me, near me. And she basically did our fellowship, and she also won a young farmer grant. So through our fellowship, you get also $5,000 to get trained to be an advocate. So basically, you learn how to do public speaking, how to do writing, how to contact your members of Congress. And this is a formal fellowship, and that was a 2-year fellowship. And then you get a $5,000 grants that can be used for your business operation. And Tulu just told me that she won $10,000 for another partner, Dreaming Out Loud, that we also fund. So, yeah, so it tells you a lot about farmers sometimes just need like small infusions of money to keep growing their operations. And Tulu is only on her like 2nd year or farm operation, and she's growing amazing turmeric. So if you want some turmeric orders, let me know. And she sells at farmers markets, and also she has something called local food purchasing agreement. That was a bill that we helped pass 4 years ago when COVID first started. So a lot of what we do is like making sure that we're building infrastructure locally and nationally and at the state level so farmers can take advantage of it. Like, I will never say that like Tulu has that ground because of something that I did, because 600 people helped pass a law. But we all help pass infrastructure like that so farmers like Tulu can apply for those loans one day.
Yeah, absolutely. What farmers markets is she at? Do you know?
I don't remember right now. Well, they're all in Maryland, so
Okay, cool.
I can go back to you on that one.
Feel free to send those over. I'd love to send them out to everybody here. I'm sure we'd all like to support local farmers as part of this as well. Ronnie, I was going to talk to you a little bit about how do you find the middle ground between the combination of both your food-related education programs as well as your water education? I know some of them are funding-based. You mentioned the program that's funding your water program, but where do you find common ground between those two areas?
That's a good question. I've been working on that for years. So y'all may know a guy named Jamie Baxter. Anybody familiar with Jamie Baxter? Okay, Jamie is at the Prince Charitable Trust right now, but before he was there, he was at the Chesapeake Bay Trust. And Jamie was doing a lot of work. He called me in early. I've been doing this work for about 13 years. I called me in about 7, 8 years ago, and there's a big thing about funding community gardens with like environmental justice funding, and it was like they overlap, but they didn't want the money to be used for one thing when there was intentions for other things, right? So it kind of had me in like this weird little space, this really weird space where I kind of just concentrated more on the urban gardening piece, the urban agriculture piece. And so I was focused on that for a lot of years, but I have training in stormwater management and different things. It just so happens, and we were talking about this group just while we were out in the lobby. It was called the Audubon Naturalist Society. It was a lady named Eliza Kava who was working there. She was a fellow with me in the environmental leadership program. And she had told me she was up there, and she was like, Ronnie, we gotta figure out how to work together. And so one of the things I was like, Eliza, well, y'all got those boots and waders. Let's just do this cool cleanup. I'm gonna bring a DJ out. We're gonna do it in Oxen Run Creek.
Nice.
It's gonna be cool. Trust me. Like, I'm telling you, bring everybody up. And she like, all right, Ronnie, let's do it. She brought out like 20, 30 pair of boots. I had a DJ out there, which is a good thing. And I was just like, Eliza, like, I want to replicate this, right? And I said, I want to replicate this. I want to make it cool to go into the creek, to restore the water, to be out here. This is Ward 8, so it's just a really side of town where the kids aren't really connected to the earth or to the water. And so she helped support that with the boots and stuff. And then we talked, and I got with her team and our team got together, and they told me that their organization had an interest in Oxen Run, the Oxen Run watershed. And so it just so happened that we were running and just opening up a new farm called the Well at Oxen Run. And as the well was opening, Green Scheme, my organization, was we were leading the programs, all of the programs there. And so Now Nature Forward saw opportunity to come program with us there. And so that's how that program sort of got built out. But that space and what I do now, and I'm really intentional on it, is I only partner with spaces. We don't want to create a whole urban farm. One of the farms we work on costs $2.4 million basically to build and to operate for the first 2 years of paying costs and all of that. We don't, like, that's not our expertise. It's a bunch of people with farm expertise who can run the operations and logistics. What I like to do is come in and make sure that we have a portion that's there for teaching. And what we do is activate that space. Besides having the farm and having the raised beds that we need, or the urban agriculture section we need, I make sure that we're based somewhere all close to, within the vicinity of the water. And so UDC is one of my, University District of Columbia is one of my other major partners. And they have a Ward 7, they have a Ward, which is on the Watts Creek right there. But not only that, they have a Ward 5 location where they're doing aquaponics, and they're also growing native Chesapeake Bay plants to help with the stormwater management program going on there. So we're able to pull all of those components in to help time in. And working with partners who have a little bit bigger bandwidth than me, I'm able to get my participants to where they need to be. It's really putting all the pieces together. That's why partnerships are key. That's why you gotta know what your partners do very well, and you gotta know what yourself does very well, to really put those plays together. But once you sort of get some stuff together, those partnerships work very, very well.
Absolutely. Kind of a posed question to all of you, but what are some of those community-driven initiatives that you use to engage those communities that you serve, especially taking into account the underserved nature of those communities that you're working with?
I think I'll follow up with what Ronnie just shared on the partnerships and how you can work collaboratively, because the question is in the engagement of the communities, right? So, like, I'll give an example. In Washington, D.C., there are municipal golf courses that are federally owned, and different from your country clubs or private golf courses, to where a municipal golf course is supposed to provide a community benefit to locals that are within the area that want to get into the practice of golf, but then they can learn about different sustainability efforts, right? And how do you create initiatives and programming to where you're not only advancing the efforts of, let's say, a municipal golf course, but then how do you create more holistic other opportunities by solving problems at that particular location? So with these municipal golf courses, there was an interest in providing a way of lowering operation expenses on their, let's say, their energy bill, for example. And so working with great partners like Mike Kennedy, who's in the audience with NRG, looking at, okay, is there a way with which we can lower the energy expenses for these particular golf courses? Okay, so we were able to do that to where by doing a quick switch to the energy bill, that lowers their operation cost and projected savings of $140,000 over the next couple of years. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, you've got some type of, projected savings or, some margins to work with. How can you use those new margins or those savings to then create additional engagements of sustainability or sportsmanship of golf or other types of programming that doesn't create an expense to the golf course, but you're just leveraging savings that you've now created in order to then create more outreach and community engagement. So then other folks within the community can learn about all these different amenities that they may or may not have known. When thinking about community engagement is how can you generate the most amount of impact or the most amount of good for every ratio of input that you do? And hopefully you can work collaboratively with different partners in such a way to where you're providing some type of benefit or support to the community, and hopefully it contributes to the prosperity of your partners as well in the process. So that's just an example that pops to mind for your question.
Absolutely. Vanessa, any thoughts on some of the community-driven approaches that you guys use in your campaigns?
Yeah, a lot of what we do, we have chapters. So a lot of what we do is really rooted in community, and chapters are like self-organized, and we are the fiscal sponsor, and we have some expectations. But a lot of what farmers do is potlucks. Is the best food I ever eaten in a farmer potluck, and also what we call farmer-to-farmer networks. We really try to facilitate spaces where farmers just can learn from each other, either to create business partnerships or to exchange conservation and climate stewardship practices. Because we know farmers are on the front lines of the climate crisis. If we just create more spaces where we can provide maybe childcare when we are paying them just to show up, sometimes to learn, and compensating for their time, because farmers don't make a lot of money. And also we are just creating really inclusive spaces where we go from everything from language inclusivity to neurodiversity. We can really create spaces where farmers feel represented. So that's really important for us. And for us, also what we do is we also bring farm workers, not only farmers, as we bring the diversity of the food system to a lot of creating cultivating spaces where we can really show up our authentic selves as we are creating more different farming communities.
Ronnie, anything to add on some of the community-driven approaches? You mentioned partnerships, and I know you probably have strong relationships with your schools in your area as well.
Yeah, definitely partnerships, and building on off of the partnerships piece. A lot of times, it's easy to get siloed in people that work in the food system or people that work in environmental education, and I think that's very important too, to make sure you're in that space and in that lane. But I think also, it's very important to bring other partners who aren't in that space into that space. And so that's one of the strategies I use. We partner with people that aren't typically in this space, and hey, let us be the introduction to you to this space. We'll meet you halfway there. Let's just get you involved. Let's get you. Bring you a part of this community, which is in all part of the greater community. So I think finding, making sure you bring people that aren't usually involved, helps you bring other people into the community and get them excited and feel like they're part of what's actually going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Diversity of thought.
Sure.
That as
yes.
well. Awesome. I think everybody has a general sense of where our speakers fall at this point, so I wanted to just go ahead and open it up if there are any specific questions that we want to ask of them at this time. Mel, go ahead.
What geographic areas do you all work in? Do you have restraints on that? You're national, but for the two of you, are you mostly DC and Eastern Maryland, and how about yourself?
Sure. Should I go first?
We're in DC, we're in Maryland, Arlington Public Schools. We've done a lot of work out Baltimore also. We're pretty open. We are in the point of speaking ambitiously. Well, we are in the point of strategically planning to really package up and replicate our organization and our programs better to help support cities or communities that have characteristics like ours that we can help and support with their programming. So maybe for us going out to other areas, it may not look like direct programming, but it'll look like consulting. It could look like program development, outreach consult, different things like that. But that's sort of our range.
Love Baltimore, I grew up in Baltimore. That's doing work there too. For us, our focus is mid-Atlantic states, predominantly states that contribute to the Chesapeake Bay. So the watershed of the Bay stretches not just Maryland, DC, or Virginia, but also includes Delaware, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and then certain parts of New York. And really what we want to do is, how do you create more of these nature-based technologies, again, letting technologies that work with nature with low tech around it to help save the bay, right? And then, with some of our partners that range from cooperatives that deal with agriculture to more NGOs that do work more internationally, that, we're hoping to operate more from a consulting perspective as well throughout our partnerships that may have different bandwidth in other locations, but, this is home, DMV, Mid-Atlantic states, and how we can be of best support here. So, yeah.
Awesome. Mike, you had a hand back there.
Yeah, Vanessa, are you familiar with the work that J.L. Chestnut did in the 2000s?
I'm not that familiar. Can you say more?
Yeah, he's an attorney who, the first black attorney in Alabama. And he did some amazing work in the early 2000s to win hundreds of millions of dollars for black farmers. So I think you might learn something if you look up J.L. Chestnut and see what methods and means he used to accomplish that.
Thank you. I met some of my partners too. Well, thank you for flagging that.
Yeah, I also wanted to familiarize you with a guy in Maryland. His name is Richard Jeffries. And Utica Bridge Farms. Are you aware of that?
That sounds a little more familiar.
Yeah, Richard is a high-intensity organic farmer, and he's gotten $50,000 to $100,000 per acre by doing high-intensity organic gardening. So that probably is also a something you should be aware of for your smaller farmers who are always, just struggling to survive. Because getting that kind of yield from a couple of acres can sometimes mean they survive and keep the farm. So then, Larry, I thought it would be interesting to just expound a little bit on the ways that we can save, that we saved for the golf courses. For instance, the opportunity that we followed to do solar, because golf courses have a lot of land, to do stormwater management, and also we started, like you said, with lowering the electricity rate, which is something that's always a good entry point for us, and we can do that in any deregulated state in the country. So that's the start, and then, as you said, Larry, we can use that extra income to leverage into things like solar and for golf courses, they're really interested also in EV charging.
Yeah, and creating those additional community benefits where preferably you can use your profits and not your pockets, right, to advance these efforts. So how do you identify immediate savings that then can then springboard to other projects? And then if you get to the situation of having solar at, let's say, at the golf courses, where you can value engineer some of those savings into other developments that you hope to do. And that's the whole premise of with this type of work and a profession called ecological engineering, where it's like, how do you think holistically about a system that you're attending to, and how do you have the most productive system based on what's existing, right? So again, with those golf courses, identify the economic savings that then can popcorn into other projects that can be beneficial without creating an additional expense to the golf courses. So EV, solar, storm prevention, things like
I
that.
just had one more thing for Larry. If you could talk a little bit about what's fascinating to me, algal turf scrubbers.
Sure.
As
Sure.
a method for,
Can I pass this around?
yeah, there you go, algae, there's the algae.
Yeah, so,
Nobody take a sip.
yeah, please.
That's my only rule.
Yeah, please don't.
It's not healthy.
It's Wednesday.
Looks
So,
Looks like a beverage.
yeah, I know, right? So to be brief, in the Chesapeake Bay, there's a big interest for reaching certain water quality improvements, right? So, algae happens to be a contributor to causing harm in the bay. If you get too much algae, you're getting algal blooms, it reduces the oxygen in the water, cuts off sunlight, the fish have a hard time, the plants in the water tend to die out. And the more algae you get, the more problems you have. Where does that algae come from? It comes from excess nutrients, fertilizers, materials coming from our cities. And when you get storm events that come in, they pick up all those pollutants and material, and then it eventually ends out in the bay. So how do you, in the most meaningful and cost-effective way, how do you address in removing this algae or removing these pollutants in a way that is working with nature? And so there's technology that's in our pocket called the algal turf scrubber that mimics, if you're ever taking a vacation to the Keys or if you're at a beach and if you notice water splashing on rock lines and you might see some algae growing on the rocks, it's mimicking that same pattern of nature where that splashing of water on rocks, it stimulates the algae to grow at a very fast rate. So we just mimic that in just designing a flowway that uses a pump. So I'm pumping water out of a river or a pond. Maybe if you're a farmer, you're looking at, trying to reduce your pollutant loads on your farm, you can just pump water down a flowway, use the power of the sun, photosynthesis, to where you can start growing large sums of algae naturally without using heavy equipment, without using heavy engineering, to get large sums of algae. And that in turn helps to clean up the bay because you're removing algae directly from your water source without using all this heavy engineering equipment. And then how can you use that algae for other applications, right? So there's ways with which you can use algae as a soil fertilizer, which could be very helpful for farmers that are and have been dependent upon synthetic fertilizers. And those costs have doubled in the last 2 years because of what's been going on internationally. So this could be a premise to where you could use a vehicle for cleaning the water by harvesting algae, taking that algae to then apply from a fertilizer perspective that again provides benefit to the farmer. You're providing a lower expense for getting fertilizers, so you're solving multiple problems at the same time. There's other applications, but that's the premise of ecological engineering, generating the most amount of good for every ratio of input that you use by working with nature and low tech. So.
Thanks.
I don't want to hog, but so that leads me to the question: do any of you do you already apply credentialing to the things that you do, badges, certifications, things like that, so that your participants are getting recognizable credit for what they're learning, particularly in your field, and all of them though, because those are stackable and can translate into community college credit, which can then translate into further education or just great bridges to either starting a business if you're going to be an incubator. It gives you credibility. Funders look at that with credibility, and so if you're going to start a business or if you're going to go to work for someone, so your user base, it's very attractive, and you can also attract more industry to support what you're doing when you're connecting workforce to skills, basic skills.
I can provide an example of that. So USDA launched 3 years ago a program called Climate Smart Commodities. It's a $3 billion fund that went through, I don't know how many, probably 150 organizations nationwide. And most of them are big corporations, and some of them are medium-sized nonprofits serving farmers. So most of these organizations, what they're doing, they're creating alternative labels related to different products across the country, focusing on climate smart commodities. And the idea is that these commodities are being produced in a more ecological way, in a way that is sequestering carbon or is helping mitigate CO2 emissions. Because of the way that carbon accounting works, it is just longer to actually report back on some of those initiatives. But what we heard so far is some of the few green commodities are out in the market, some of them being rice and beef. And what we have seen so far is it's just creating an alternative market. So like young farmers and byproduct producers and other big chains like PepsiCo and McDonald's and many others who are part of this big supply chain can infuse some of the supply chains with the certifications. Basically just having more and greener supply chains.
For products and
For products.
Yeah, I was thinking of the actual folks that are learning and working too. That's great.
And they have communities of practice when they can all learn from each other. If a labor is doing better than the other, or if they're having more marketing concerns versus how to market something, or if you have supply chains they're struggling with cotton versus rice. So they have created a lot of what they call communities of practice. So all the 150 implementers and all the farmers who are on this network, they can be learning from each other business practices.
So the Department of Natural Resources in Maryland has an ag forestry expert, Francis Smith, and he will go into organizations if you invite him, or into colleges or whatever, and help stand up agroforestry certification programs and things like edible landscapes, which is something that you will probably work with too, in changing cities out of countries anywhere. So he's a really good resource and very approachable, and he loves to work with organizations.
What's the name,
You have any
Francis?
edible ones?
Francis Smith with the DNR. Works for Ann Strangston, Harrison Strang and Dan Ryder. And you can find all of these people through the Rural Maryland Council as well.
I found a couple of challenges, because I have had a good group of people. So what we run is and this my director of development is her baby, so I can't talk. I started it though, but I can't take too much credit because she has taken it and blew it past what it is. But we run a really good internship program. So we usually average about 4 interns a year. I particularly like college level students, but we have opened it up in the last 2 years to some high school students.
That's dual enrollment, and if you do it in Maryland, you'll help your school district satisfy the blueprint requirements by opening it up to the high schools and the CTEs for related instruction. And your organization could be an employer and CTE, and that's apprenticeship, which has 450 hours for youth apprentices of related instruction and then hands-on experiential learning, and they get college credit at the same time as they're doing it.
Well, this is good information because I've been trying to find, there we go about partnerships again, right? Because I've been trying to find a way to get them a certification. We run a program, they're not called Audubon, they're called Nature Forward now. But we run another program, it's called a Flood Readiness Program, where we give out a certification with them for that. And a lot of my interns go through it, even my staff go through it, and then a lot of the members who's involved into that Oxen Run Creek project are going through this program with us. It's pretty cool, and they've been able to take it places, but it's a couple of things I would want to do with the kids, especially in high school, to be able to come out with a certification. And one thing that we've been able to create is we've been able to create we're like if you're going to the NBA draft, we're like a Division I school. We got a bunch of championships. The players that we put out are really good, and we have a ton of success stories from starting their own farms to one of my interns, Kayla. She went to Maryland University, ran track and field. Her father got cancer, and she is now and she came intern with us. Now her and her father run a family farm. They're at the Spice Sweet Farmers Market, which is a pretty popular farmers market in DC, and we were able to help her mitigate those sort of things just by really being affiliated. But like one of my interns works for DC Greens now, who is the farm operator of the farm, one of the farms I do the outdoor classroom in, so we was able to personally recommend her. And then some other people that went to public health programs and stuff, American University, Georgetown, and a few Howard students. But the internship program is really good, and knowing information like you just said about other programs who are working on that and who really have the academia side together where, you know, I didn't just want to say it's a difference between a certification and a certificate. So I wanted to make sure that we had something that if we wanted, especially just in DC, for our young people, profit and money is something that is really motivating to them. So I want to make sure that I'm not just telling them take this certification and then oh, you know, then you go ahead. Like, it's no value unless, you know, we're able to do our internship program to make personal recommendations for them to get to and be able to cultivate them and show them other opportunities in the workforce that they can get into while working with us. But I'm glad you shared that information.
I think you'll probably hear from both of us. You're familiar with the Maryland Apprenticeship Connector. Is an organization that connects folks like you to the apprenticeship tracks
For sure.
in the state as well. And then there can be there are some financial incentives at the state level. I can't guarantee you get them, but they're there. And it's very important to the school districts for the blueprint because their funding depends on the percentage of their students that go through a dual enrollment apprenticeship program.
We're doing that too as well. We're trying to work with Montgomery County Public Schools, specifically with CTE program for electricians.
Yeah.
And there are ways in which we can actually collaborate because one of the challenges is how do we get that certification? And, you know, there's OSHA certification, there's, you know, there are ways that we can pull on the dual certifications, dual credits. But I wanted to ask you one of the questions, and it's for everyone. It ties to two questions I had. Obviously, you're working on education, and all of you are doing that to a certain degree. Translating that to jobs, you know, certifications are great, but how many have actually walked away with a job? And I think that's what, at least from workforce development perspective, they want to see what jobs are available, especially when you're looking at climate-related jobs, and these are, and then, you know, what is the walk of the takeaway from that? So, can you speak to that in your view?
I keep saying those great questions. These are all great questions. I feel like for our approach at the Green Scheme is because I've done green job presentations for Department of Employment Services, and you know, you got construction companies you could talk to. You have DC Water, or you have like different agencies that you kind of could talk to, but I haven't found a secure like lock-in, right?
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, that's why, and I mentioned this to a couple people out front. We just did it's called the Yes Summit, Youth Environmental Summit, and it's for between 150 to 200 11th, 12th graders that are DC public school students, and we bring everybody out from USDA to the local organizations like Casey Trees, to the EPA, to different nonprofit organizations who are doing the work, and we expose these kids to these businesses and to these career pathways. We bring a guest speaker out there, and they also have to participate in the activation with one of these companies that come out. And I see that as our role as of right now, is to just help build that connection and pipeline to those employers, to our young people. I don't have a straight blueprint or algorithm to we can just grab these 10 companies, and I don't know the groups that exist, because I'm sure people doing work out there. We're like, hey, let's get these groups of employees together to put them here, let's get these group of employees together to help support these people. And I just haven't personally done that work, and I'm sort of like the visionary of my organization, so I haven't really tapped into really trying to do that direct kid to career piece, but a lot of the in the missionary stuff is stuff that we sort of try to build up and just try to help the flow go a little bit faster to there. And like we're also open. I can't wait to find a good partner or partners who can be like, hey, you know, I can't wait for a company or a corporate funder to say, hey, we can take 3 of these kids and put them on a 6 months internship or a summer internship where they, you know, they can have a pipeline to our job. And the one person, there's 2 people now, I mentioned them here, who have been really interested and have been really pressing on us. One of them is the USDA, and I shouldn't say this wrong, y'all, and I'm not even gonna say because the camera here, but it's like an 18-something scholarship.
1890s.
Yeah, 1890 scholarship. I didn't, thank you. This is my fellow mate right here, and then that was one of them. And then also the USDA has their forestry department, which somebody mentioned earlier. It's a lady named Beecher up there who she's been really pushing to get more jobs, especially for people of color, into the USDA. So just trying to figure that out. I think it should be a lot more conversations with companies, especially the federal USDA, but not just the USDA. The companies that they contract and the companies that they grant out money to. I think it should be some level of conversation that goes on to open up that dialogue to figure out that better, because I feel like that space isn't all the way fleshed out yet. But I want to pass this to my fellow panelists, because they may have explored some of these spaces that I haven't. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm happy to answer. So when the coalition first started, we only 14 years old. We focus a lot on workforce development, and we call that training and beginning farming opportunities in agriculture. So for a lot of those years, we focus a lot on making that funding mandatory at the federal level. And in the 2018 Farm Bill, we make that funding mandatory. So right now there is $50 million that are mandatorily funded. So that's around $10 million a year that go to beginning farmer rancher training opportunities. So any organization and a nonprofit that can prove that they can train farmers can apply for it. And I'm actually one of the reviewers, and we have farmers who serve on the advisory committee for that. And there's a separate one that's called 2501 that focuses on just farmers of color. And that money is locked in. So what we discover after focusing on all that workforce development is that we train all these farmers, but they cannot make a livelihood. So a lot of what we're struggling right now is that our safety net for the new generation of farmers is non-existent. So if you are a first generation farmer that doesn't come from multi-generational wealth or multi-generational farm, and you're trying to buy land, there's not really a good bridge. There's not really a safety net. So what happens is you have to stay working on your job, and you become a farmer on the side because you still need health insurance, and you're still probably paying childcare, and you have student loans. And if you have student loans, you cannot apply for the loans at USDA. So you have all those things going on. So right now we have really moved away from training farmers. We think we have a lock-in. You literally can go watch 1,000 YouTube videos from your cooperative extension systems, and you'll get your 3 years of experience in farming that way. But right now we do not have a safety net for the next generation. So a lot of what we are focusing right now, especially as we are trying to work on the Farm Bill, that is the vehicle that we use to create more programs for agriculture, is actually creating more safety nets from crop insurance, from loans, from grants, because just give people money, honestly, we don't want loans. I'm sorry, I have student loans, I don't want more loans.
Yep.
Exactly. And just creating more support systems and better financing for farmers. And a lot of what we're doing is working on that intersection, and that's the reason we gave away so much money. We gave away $1.3 million to prove that if you just give money to farmers, we will have farmers. But you have to create a safety net for the next generation, because right now there's no safety net for the next generation of farmers. And what is we see often, many people start farming, they do not stay farming.
Yeah.
It's something we call the RMC, the transfer of wealth issue,
Yeah.
which originally started out being a big discussion about money moving, and I'll pat myself on the shoulder for this if you do that. I said we need to start thinking about it as retaining business, small rural businesses is your transfer of wealth, not money moving around, because often the money is tied up in the land and the equipment and all of these things, and younger generations or extended family will sell the land to developers rather than fight these battles you're talking about. So it's
Yeah.
it's a big deal, and something that the Rural Maryland Council for Maryland takes very seriously, and covers a lot of the Chesapeake, all that area, and all the waterways and all that stuff. But we've branched out to Western Maryland as well, and we overlap into Delaware and Virginia and DC because we're right there. So it's an organization that you three should tap into and come and talk maybe at our next summit or quarterly meeting about the experiences, because it's real, and there's a lot of people trying to work on that issue.
Yeah, so a lot of what we fund, especially fund, is like farm transition. Right now we're in a law brick battle trying to fund more farm transition planning, because a lot of counties and states do not have a lot of support system for farm transition and farm succession planning. So one of our pilot programs at USDA that we're working, and actually that we have a DMV awardee, is to focus on that farmland transition and succession. And also creating more incentives for people to transfer their land to the next generation, and that means tax incentives too, because and also farmland prices are only keep going up, and young farmers still do not have enough capital to compete with a developer. So we have to be thinking really creative on financial access and competition to keep farmers in the land and put them in the land.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug?
Ronnie, you mentioned earlier a flood resilience certificate or flood. Your group offers that, or were you referring to another?
No, that's us in collaboration with Nature Forward.
Oh,
So we're doing our trainings in the Oxenron Creek. I want to say we're getting ready to wrap up this sort of performance period now, but we've been running it all summer, and we ran another one last year too. It wasn't called Flood Readiness. I forgot what it was on, but it was based off of bay restoration stuff. I wasn't hands-on. My development director was pretty much running that show, but yeah, we do those certifications, and those are in collaboration with Nature Forward. We're also, I'm trying to finish up the paperwork now, finalize the MOU with UDC. So and this goes back onto some of the training stuff that y'all, I forgot to mention. University District of Columbia has approached us to train my team to do the aquaponics and aquaculture certifications that they're doing. So we'll be going through a training once everything is finalized. We'll be going through a training where we're able to give out those certifications throughout the city. And I think that's what's going to be helpful for our young people, especially in DC, and we're going to extend this out to DC, probably Maryland and Virginia in a minute. But just to give them the basic training and have a certification on that, that's still a really touchy industry to get into, to perfect it. But if we can get young urban kids the opportunity to receive this training, and it is backed by not just our organization but the University of District of Columbia, and I think that's a step forward in sort of what we're trying to do. So it goes back to what we said in the beginning. Just the partnerships are so key.
That would be a perfect partnership in Maryland, Pennsylvania, all the other Chesapeake.
For sure. I was just going to ask you to bring it to life a little bit for us, the training, like what that includes, like, look at your downspouts, or if you have a swell, an incline, or
For the flood readiness one?
yeah, what does that include?
They're actually on site. So I remember they were doing it. They doing them at Ward 7 and Ward 8 sites. So I'm pretty sure that they at either Watts, which is the farm in Ward 7, or Oxenron Creek, which is the farm in Ward 8. They're doing them at both of those locations. Give me 2 minutes after this panel. I just pull up my emails.
And I could look it up. I imagine.
No, and I
on the
can
website.
connect you with our people. And we're working with up there, Jamani Overly. Anybody know Jamani from Nature Forward? She's somebody y'all should know. She's on the ground. She's right around the corner. Their office is not too far. She's doing a lot of work based off of the Bay Restoration and the DC chapter. I think she's the DC representative for DC.
Cool. Thanks. I was also just going to make folks available. It sort of is related to this discussion. Emerald Cities Collaborative. It's a wonderful organization. You probably know who they are, based in DC and around the country. But they have this the DC Contractor Incubator, designed to empower local small and disadvantaged firms in the district to effectively compete in the 21st century construction industry by focusing on the green building and clean energy sectors. The program strengthens participants' knowledge, skills, and networks. It's an 8-week program. I mean, it's for firms as opposed to individuals, but small. So I just thought, and it starts in a couple of weeks in mid-September, and the application ends with, I thought, wow, that is an awesome program.
Who leads that? That's a government agency?
No, that's the Emerald Cities Collaborative.
Okay, Emerald Cities Collaborative.
And the program's called, it looks, the DC Contractor Incubator, but it's the DMV.
For sure.
So if you're a small business, a disadvantaged business, is the words they use. I guess skill,
Yeah.
enhancing your skills and connecting you with the green sector. Yeah, sounded pretty cool.
Michelle, I have a quick question, and I'm addressing it to Larry. This is regarding your algae.
Okay.
Wanted to find out if that has been used for algae to create clean energy or energy, and if that's something that you tapped into, also as a means to be able to bring in general revenue.
Sure.
Because it sounds like you're working with municipalities.
Yeah.
I'm curious about energy companies and clean energy options. So can you share?
Yeah, there's definitely a connection between algae and energy. So at the research level, we've worked in partnership with University of Maryland for deploying a algal turf scrubber system. So that's the technology to produce and grow all this algae. And you can make many tons of this stuff depending on how big your system is. And looking at situations of circular economies. How can you use this algae for other applications such as energy? So there are ways with which you can convert the algae using anaerobic digestion, for example, to produce methane. And then in this research pilot, we then converted the methane, captured the methane, and fed it through a fuel cell to then produce free emissions electricity on site. So what does that mean? So the system was designed to harvest algae in Baltimore for the Bethesda River. Okay, so you're cleaning up and reaching water quality goals for the bay. At the same time, and then you're helping this large municipality or a commercial site meet their stormwater water quality requirements, right? Because they have to follow certain mandates by the Clean Water Act, right? But then what are these other use cases? And so you can take algae, convert it to free emission electricity to where the pilot project that we did this at this industrial site, there's many acres of parking lots at this marine terminal and many dozens of light fixtures, street lighting. So we were able to calculate that from the algae that was captured to then convert into electricity could power all of the 4 dozen parking lot lighting for that terminal for 3 years straight, right? So you're cleaning the water, you're producing free emission electricity and solving multiple different problems at the same time.
Now, you always sell to a municipality a cost savings, which is always challenging, especially in the government sector, because it's not tangible. So if you're talking about cost savings, how do you balance that with, hey, now we can create electricity and be able to clean up this particular area within a circular economy? So talk to me about the economics and the financial gain.
Yes, so the Chesapeake Bay and different states have markets that incentivize businesses and enterprises in cleaning up the bay by implementing green technologies. The way that they go about this is developing either payable credits, right, in which if I install a turf scrubber system, I'm generating this amount of algae. That means this is X number of credits that is positively impacting the Chesapeake Bay. That can then lead to where there's state funding or payable credit market to where there's reimbursements for an economic value for installing this technology, because then they didn't have to do it, right? Okay, so that's one side of the economics. Secondly, from the payable credits piece, you've got municipalities, you have large private industrial sites, you've got farmers, all required to report on what their stormwater management impact is from their site. Typically that's associated with a stormwater management fee that tends to show up on some type of water bill or something of that sort. So if you can demonstrate a verifiable technology like the algal turf scrubbers where, hey, we're creating this amount of impact on the Chesapeake Bay ecologically, they have already created a market that justifies the economic value of that through the payable credits or reimbursements. And then from there, that creates an opportunity where you can take those excess revenues to then invest in other types of infrastructure, such as converting the algae into electricity. So it's, from a cost economic justification is, okay, let's solve this problem here first from a water management perspective. And let's leverage the market that's already in place. And then we can use margins of those profits from those payable credits to then finance other types of infrastructure that can then lead to energy or to other circular use cases for algae or for other situations.
And what's the job description for someone who would be able to do this? So we can hire or train them, either in high school or college?
An eco-technician.
An eco-technician. Thank you.
I was
Are
gonna
the
say
credits
credit
tradable? Can you trade the credits?
Yes.
So just like carbon emission trading?
Yes, it's very similar.
But you're not
But
talking
for
about
water.
Reggie though.
Pardon?
No,
You're not talking about Reggie, you're talking about another.
These are nutrient credits.
Nutrient credits through, so with Maryland Department of Environment, they have a water quality trading credit program.
Hmm.
There's also allocated budget through the Clean Water Commerce Act that acts as a reimbursement to companies that front the cost of installing stormwater management projects with verifiable impact, right? That's why the technology with the algae is so important, because this is a verifiable technology. We know exactly how much pollutions we're reducing through this technology. Versus with a tree or green spaces, you can make assumptions, but there's some margin of error. But with this, you can verify everything. And so you verify it, you can then, respond to an RFP that they put out for reimbursement from your technology, and this is what it translates to, reducing your pollutant load in the bay
For private sector, not public sector?
for private sector. Yeah.
James?
Larry, could you expand on the waste from the anaerobic digestion, the biochar that it creates, and the long-term carbon storage and the effects that it can have going back
Yeah.
into the bay? Because I think that will really kind of paint a picture of the closed loop.
Yeah, and again, that's the whole premise of ecological engineering. You're taking a problem and generating multiple solutions from that problem. So algae is a problem within our watershed. How can we capture that algae to clean the water? Okay, now we're producing free emission electricity as an example. But now, when you put algae through anaerobic digestion, you've got what's called digestate, which is kind of like the leftovers after that whole process has taken place. That's still organic material that you could then convert into, let's say, biochar, which is, superheating your materials that can then be used for carbon credits and can be applied to soils in an agriculture setting and increasing soil health and other types of circular uses, to where it's a gift that keeps on giving. So you're taking that one problem and you've generated multiple solutions for water, for energy, for agriculture, for soil, for all of these other components in a series. And then responding to your previous question from a workforce development, it's been difficult for us to get to that point because we had to take the last 5 years we've been in business to demonstrate these types of technologies at pilot, and then now with being a part of the incubator program, taking the next steps to scale so that it creates a sustainable system for development and training and workforce development, to where whether you're someone that's at Morgan State, a University of Maryland, or you're someone that's off of Pratt Street in Baltimore that's looking for a well-payable job that has meaning and value, that you can kind of have your cake and eat it too if you play your cards right, is what we're trying to do.
So that biochar at the end can be applied to stormwater management, it can be an air filter for incinerators in Baltimore, or the ones that you guys are closing in a couple of years. Yeah, in Montgomery County, so there's two of them. What they're doing is also, it's not just algae that this can apply to, you can apply this to all waste wood, invasive bamboo, and certain of these feedstocks have potential solutions more than the other ones, and all of them can create the electricity. So you're talking in the state of Maryland, 250,000 tons, metric tons of waste wood every year. You don't have to plant, you don't have to do anything. So that's actually what I wanted to talk to you about, is these incinerators that are closing down. There's 2 spots in Montgomery County, and we can leverage these as extension sites with the universities at Shady Grove, which represents the University of Maryland and the Maryland System University, partnering with Morgan State, so that you can turn these old incinerators, old defunct coal power plants, into biotech hubs, where you can have the algae. You can be making algae on site. That algae can be growing in the coal ash pond, solving that problem. The biochar goes in there. The biochar goes into all the worst problems that we have. The jobs that are created from that solve what you guys are talking about with the workforce development. Everything that you want. We have, Maryland has what, the second best quality of education in the country.
And if you put experiential learning centers, outdoor learning labs, living learning centers associated with this, and have these as small innovation incubator showcases, and then connected to the bigger ones in our network, now you've created this education solution network.
And just to put some icing on the cake, this is my partner Yusuf. He's the CEO of a genomics company, and if you can turn these former incinerators as places where you're getting data from all of these diverse species, that you can literally create precision biomedicine for our constituents, from genomic samples, from women, which we don't have samples of right now, from people of color. And so that way you get a buy-in, and we're talking about each of these whole genomic sequence samples, they're $1,000 each, maybe $2,500. So you do 25,000 of these samples a year, and it creates all the revenue that you need and some. I mean, just in Montgomery County, I'm talking $249.7 million by year 5.
Are you connected to the FITSE network?
I'm fresh in the incubator, so I'm getting
I'm not saying you
molded.
want to go there. I'm just saying there's folks there that are working on things that would be great partnerships. And we've talked, even when I was at FITSE before, we talked, because I used to work there with the college. Frederick Innovative Technology Center.
I think there was one more hand in the back, so I'm gonna let you guys go in just a second. Let's just wrap up one last question, and then I have one last question for you guys. Mike, on topic?
All
Just a
my
precursor.
interns they have a little notice if I'm not on topic, they just touch their nose like this, so. Emily, I'll leave it to you to see if it's on topic. I just wanna make sure everyone understands, and it seems clear at this point, there are so many circular ways to do biomimicry and make it all work together. There are a lot of choices here. I think it might be good to, just to clarify the potential for developers and use TradePoint as an example of how you can save acres of land that you would otherwise have to create a stormwater management pond for, by doing these kinds of technology, because that's one other way to monetize all of this. The other thing is that Larry and I have talked about the possibility of manufacturing these algal turf scrubbers. They're very easy to build, and so that could be another way to create job opportunities.
Yeah. Really just creating holistic justice. Maybe that's a new term I'm coining now. Or somebody else has probably said it. Whoever said it. Gold star. But yeah, it's just, again, it's biomimicry, eco-mimicry, right? Where you're letting nature solve problems, and that extends an invitation of justice for communities to participate in. So Mike mentioned with TradePoint Atlantic, they're a large global logistics center in Sparrows Point, Baltimore. My grandparents worked there when they moved to Baltimore back in the 40s and 50s because they weren't making money in sharecropping in South Carolina. And long story short, they're a massive site. They're a large contributor to pollution to the bay because they're the size of Annapolis, for example. And that these types of technologies provide a low impact and holistic justice where you're helping developers meet their requirements and cleaning up the bay. You can produce several different services and products that can be a benefit to the community at large. And then again, from the workforce development partnerships to where you can provide an invitation for folks to get access to, maybe they're fired up about algae. Most people aren't, but I am. But you might find that one person that's interested. You might find folks that might be interested in just wanting to get a sustainable job to contend with, and that you can kind of meet those two together. So that's as brief as I can describe it to the question, but I don't know if that helps. So.
If we're over, we're over. No? All right. So, and this is a question for all of us really, like how do we create this, I got a name for it now, the Center for Eco-Entrepreneurism, and an equitable economy, and whereby we harness these brilliant eco-entrepreneurs and their networks in the business community. Yusuf, we got to contact Yusuf with the genome development in the biosciences, because we know development in the biosciences is going to solve a lot of the world's problems. And government can play a role somehow in helping these eco-entrepreneurs establish proof of concept for whatever their thing is. How do we get that done? I get calls all the time from people saying, I got this great gadget and da-da-da-da, and I'm like, what? That's terrific, but there's a competitive bidding process, and you have to get in our vendor bid, but no one, maybe we don't even know what the problem is, that a triple benefit for, as you've described, so it's nicely.
Would the educational system be able to take care of that? Would the educational system be able to take care of that?
Hardly, but it seems like it's a collaboration between.
If only 2% of patents that are executed come from universities. So right now there's a huge research to business translation issue that's going on. So that's primarily what we're focused on. I actually have a document I can send to you. I just did, and it includes Larry's work, Justin's work, the solars, the genomics. It ties it all together, and if you can turn these old incinerators in defunct areas, essentially bioremediation projects, right, into thriving biohubs, regardless of the technology. If you're having multiple companies where one's waste is the other input, you can lower all these costs. You can eliminate transportation costs, which is what failed.
I think that's ideal. I think that's a wonderful idea. I believe in it. I follow it, but I don't see it. And therefore, I question what the issues are around executing it. And oftentimes, those are more political. Those are more things that we cannot control.
In Montgomery County, they've just allocated to do this, and I've already spoken to council member Lorianne Sales, who is interested in this. There's $7 billion that are being allocated in the historic surplus to do. But
it hasn't been done.
Well, I mean, the first step. The first step is to close down these incinerators that are causing asthma and cancer to our constituents.
This could apply to the data center questions as
Exactly,
well, which is
exactly.
huge. And out in Frederick, we've got Quantum on that big old site.
We just happen to be in the county that can lead this in the entire United States of America, because what Boston has in biotech is great, but they don't have agriculture. They don't have Grow Zone 8 fields to pilot, right? To get things out of just a research paper that, oh great, it's in a book that no one reads. Like, we don't have the luxury of doing conventional accelerators and incubators when we're trying to create climate change mitigation, right? There's people that are dying right now. So like, we have to accelerate and kind of remove what you're talking about. Montgomery County's doing
I think to bring it back to
My fault, I'm sorry.
We all need to gather.
I think I need to let you guys go. So the sense I get. So I just want to ask
List of names
Doug,
and
to one of your
contact
points, or to answer one of your questions, I think part of the dialogue starts here, which you
Yeah.
can see is extreme and diverse and is, what do you call that? Growing, I guess would be the word. So I think dialogue starts here, and that's one of the reasons that we put on these series, is because there are these complex problems that involve multiple stakeholders, and these are an incredible representation of part of the solution to it, but not putting them in any kind of bucket, but they're not the only ones out there. There are many more of you, and thank God for that. So I guess just to fully wrap this up, I want to ask you guys, and kind of as a call to action here at the end, what are the ways in which individuals, community members, we have an engaged audience here, can get involved and also can raise awareness about some of the environmental justice issues that you guys are seeing? Can they get involved directly with your programs? I mean, some of them probably have students, potentially in the DC area. How can we be supporters? I'm not a farmer myself, but how can we be supporters of farmers? And Larry, how can we support you as well? So if we could just close with that.
Sure. Yeah, I think just like I said this earlier, but just really doing your research, understanding who's working in what space, what type of work they've already done. So as you do come to the table, you're coming with a holistic approach, understanding that all of these details and lanes play a part into pushing our whole mission forward. I think that's one of the key things, and just really just knowing who's working in the space. And even when you think you know who's working in the space, there's always more amazing people to meet. That so it's almost like the old saying they always say, school's never out. So always just be open, have an open mind in approaching this work, because we all working to push to the same agenda, same goals.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me, definitely support farmers. It's definitely the farmers market. I just want to remind you, when you go to the grocery store, a farmer is only getting 10 cents or whatever dollar you spend. Where at the farmers market or through a community supported agriculture, they're getting a better share. And especially for beginning farmers, signing up for the community supported agriculture or CSA shares really allows them to build a safety net. At the same time, we're talking a lot about government, and obviously that's what I do. It's really important. It's a Farm Bill year. It's probably gonna be next year too, so please get involved with the Farm Bill. We will send you our Farm Bill Action Toolkit if you wanna learn more about some of our priorities. But one of those priorities are encouraging farmer-led research and farmer-led entrepreneurship, and just more solutions to build a safety net for farmers. Because right now, the way our farm and food system is working is not really set up to really invest in the sustainable transformations that I hear you all passionately talking about. And farmers are really innovative. Farmers are in the front line of these things. Like, we will have 3 of my farmers here that will have to tell you about 3 other crazy side businesses that they have. And because they're really innovative. They're entrepreneurs, they're leaders, they have non-profits sometimes, and they're also farming, and they also have a full-time job. So my farmers are really creative, and they are in the front lines of the solutions too.
Thank you. Beautiful. Larry.
Well, let's see, call to action. I would say if you get a chance today, Google Eagle Harbor Maryland Matters article. That and please take a read of that, because that gives a narrative to some of the work that's going on with the city of Eagle Harbor, with the coal power plant, and just sharing that with your networks so that way people can know what's going on more real time. And maybe a second call to action is to follow us on Green Mechanics, Benefit LLC on our LinkedIn page and Instagram. We're hoping to put more content out as far as for different community or activities that we believe could be an invitation for folks within the area to come out to see these types